All right. Hello, hello, hello. We are live for a special comics launch interview. I'm excited about this one. We're going to be talking about comics, nostalgia, creation, and sharing your expertise online and elsewhere. And this is going to be a really fun interview. So I am excited to bring on my guest today. My guest today is an illustrator, designer, and comic book creator who's known to burn the midnight oil in his Serkwork art labs. He creates work featuring robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. He's the creator of the 80s themed Kids versus Zombie comic adventure, Young and the Dead, which is the latest issue for that, which is live on Kickstarter. And he's also been putting out great resources for cartoonists, young and old alike, on his YouTube channel. So welcome for the first time to the comics launch community, Scott Serkland. How you doing, Scott?
Hey, Tyler. It is great to be on. I'm super excited too. I am first time on the show, but a long time listener. So I've been following you for a while, and you have, comics launch has really helped me out. Just learning the Kickstarter platform and everything. So I'm super excited to be on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. We chatted a little while ago, and you you reminded me of just how long I've actually been doing this thing, because
Yeah, me too.
you mentioned hearing me on a podcast like over like years before I even started podcasting on my own. Shout out to the Art and Story folks, Jersey and company. Yeah, it's great to connect in this format and get into it. But I always want to start with the thing that's most pressing with you right now. You've got a launch on Kickstarter. So what can you tell us about Young and the Dead?
Well, other than what you already said, you did a really good pitch for me. But Young and the Dead is a kids versus zombie adventure story. It's in the vein of Goonies. It's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. So if you're a fan of all those 80s kid-centric action adventure films like the Goonies, Monster Squad, Explorer, E.T., let's see what else, Cloak and Dagger, all those classics, and more recently Stranger Things. If you're a fan of Stranger Things, you will love this. It's all of that stuff, but with zombies. So it's kids fighting zombies in a zombie apocalypse, trying to find a cure. It's about a brother and two brothers actually who team up with a ragtag group of neighborhood misfits. And a lot of these are kind of nerdy kids who were kind of shunned by society maybe, but now they're the ones that kind of know about zombies, and then the ones that know how to defeat them and all that kind of stuff. So it's sort of the underdogs becoming the heroes in a situation like this. So it's a fun story. Yeah, like I said, it's currently live on Kickstarter. There are five issues available, and then I've got variant covers and all kinds of cool stuff, cool rewards and everything available.
Yeah, very cool. And it's definitely, like, as you said, we are sort of in an age where I think nostalgia and horror kind of goes hand in hand. Stranger Things, Netflix's Fear Street, which has been pretty interesting.
I haven't seen that one. I started watching Paper Girls, which is another one that's kind of, has a lot of that nostalgic feel too. So yeah.
Yep. Paper Girls. And then also, with horror and remakes, like it seems like the classics just continue to be the most relevant stuff. I just rewatched Candyman or the new Candyman version, which gave me some throwbacks to watching that as a teenager. What made you want to tell a story in sort of the 80s and that era?
Well, the funny thing is, I like most of the comic ideas I do are, they feature kids as the protagonists. The problem is, as an older guy, I'm just in my, just now in my 50s. So if I try to write for like a younger group of kids, it's not. I'm just not going to know the vernacular and all that stuff. But I definitely know. I grew up in the 80s, so I know the 80s. I know how kids talked, and so I can do. There's a lot of, especially with horror nowadays, you've got to contend with like cell phones and things like that, and it really sometimes it can create a problem for telling horror stories when you can just call anyone you need, and you got to figure out, well, how do we get rid of the cell phones, all of that stuff. So that's one of the reasons why. And plus, I just love that stuff. I love, like I said, all those movies and everything I mentioned, Goonies, Monster Squad, etc., are just stuff that I really enjoyed growing up. So I wanted to tell a story like that. And when it started off, it really was. And going back to what you said about art and story, I've been, I started following those guys, and there was kind of an offshoot where they did something called the Mini Comics Dump Truck, which was basically this mini comics club where everyone would contribute a mini comic, and then at the end, everyone got everyone's mini comic. So you create a mini comic, but you get all these other mini comics for all these other creators. And it's supposed to be an 8-page mini comic, and I'm thinking, well, okay, I got to come up with something simple. And then I just thought, but kids versus zombies, that's simple enough. And it wasn't meant to be much more than that. But once I started writing it, I started getting into the characters, and it just kind of grew from there. And it ended up, I mean, I'm getting 8-page mini comics from everyone else, but I'm sending them a full 22-page comic, in return. So
over delivering. There you go.
Yeah, I just really got into it, and then it just kind of went from there. And I'm like, oh, how does the story unfold? How does it end? And the issue that's currently up right now, along with all the previous issues, is the penultimate issue. So I've got one more to go, but that last one's already written. So what really started off is just trying to come up with a concept was just super simple, basic, and it just kind of going out of control in a good way.
Yeah, no, I love that. And getting started with something small is always a great way to get going. And often, because I feel like there are sometimes, you've got a cool little idea, and 8 pages is a perfect size for that cool little idea. You get in, you get out, and you're done. And then other times it's like, oh, wait a minute, I really want to do more with this. And so I love hearing the evolution of that from a little, like a smaller prompt. That's very cool.
Tyler, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I put a lot of content out teaching people how to do comics and stuff like that online. And that is my number one bit of advice, is just start small, because you can always build on that. I did a video on just 1-page comics, because you can start with just do a 1-page comic, and then if you do one, every week or every day or something like that, it adds up, and before you know it, you can collect them in an anthology. You've got a whole book. So people get really intimidated by these. A lot of people want to start off with this huge magnum opus. They want to tell their Lord of the Rings, Tolkien style adventure. But a lot of people, they get burned out before. It's just that idea of creating this huge thing is just so huge that they just kind of, they don't deliver. So I always tell people, start off small and kind of build on that.
Yeah. And I'll be perfectly honest. Like, I'm someone who I give that advice and it's the hardest thing for me to take for myself, because it's like anytime I sit down and have an idea, it always seems like to be like this big sprawling thing. And so but I have actually, real respect for some creators. Like I mentioned, we just launched a Kickstarter today for A Fistful of Pain, which is by Ryan K. Lindsay and Louis Joyce. And Ryan has this incredible ability to launch these really epic, high concept sci-fi things that are in these fully realized worlds, but the story he's telling, it's a one shot, and he can do it in 64 pages or less.
That's awesome.
Or he can do it in a 3-issue miniseries. And would there be a lot more, that you could do with that? Sure. But the challenge with a lot more is that if it takes a minimum of 6-7 issues to get to something that really has heart to it, you're probably never going to get there, or it becomes the degree of difficulty gets so high. So but I also think that's one of the cool things about comics is you can sort of in short order create these worlds and tell a story in them, and it doesn't have to be a massive thing.
Yeah.
So but one of the things that I've also and this is a pitfall that I get into, sometimes I'll create these high concepts and realizing that here's a world, and then it's like, oh, if you're going to set it in a world that does not exist, the more things you change about that world, the more of a project it is to kind of go figure that whole world out. And there's world building, it becomes all these other things. So to a certain extent, by actually setting your stories in worlds that have existed, or where you're changing just one or two things, like, it's the 80s, but there's a zombie outbreak, that does a lot of your that does a lot of your world building for you, which is, and takes some stuff off. But I'm curious, like, yes, you and I, we both grew up in the 80s. We got a lot of that stuff rolling around in our heads. But when you're doing something like this, do you go back and do research, like, to flesh out what you're going to talk to, or was pretty much everything from Young and the Dead stuff that's just like, hey, you know what? I lived it, I know it, and I'm doing it. I'm curious.
A little bit of both, and going back to setting it at a certain time that you're familiar with, it does help you. It also helps, with the characters. A lot of these characters are loosely based on kids I grew up with, so I can just like, I don't have to flesh out the characters as much, because I just think, oh, what would my friend back in the day do in a situation like this? So there's that. And then as far as research and things, there's some research, like some, I pull up a lot of photo reference for some of there's a lot of nostalgia hidden in the pages. Like sometimes you may see a toy or something in the background.
Yeah.
So I may look at something like that, but a lot of it is, and for a while I was kind of worrying about people being real sticklers for, oh, the Rubik's Cube wasn't popularized until this time, but so I've been careful not to really say exactly what time it is. It's in the 80s. It's probably more early 80s, but I haven't really said, this is 1983 or 1984 or whatever. But then even if there is, those sticklers out there that are like, this wasn't time accurate or whatever, it's also sort of in a alternate reality. Obviously, we never really had a zombie apocalypse in the 80s, so some other things, maybe the Rubik's Cube didn't come out till later in that, or something like that. So there is some things that. Are you looking up when the Rubik's Cube came out? Because I know it was invented early. But
I'm trying to think of the show, the show set in the 80s that's actually really funny. It's on the top of my mind, but like,
the Goldbergs?
They'd always say, the year was 1980 something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so they sort of play with that, where they're gonna have, they're trying to do a show that has the feel of the 80s, but they're not being so tied to
right.
Exactly the timeline. Because, like, let's be honest, our memory, it's about memories, and our memories, kind of jumble that up a little bit. Like you said something about how it was a different time, and it was a time versus having a little bit more difficult, like maybe writing something about kids that age right now. And you mentioned Monster Squad, and I think about one of those like weird quirks that the kids today would like never understand, but like Monster Squad was like this great white whale of a movie to watch for me, because my family never had HBO growing up, but I would always go to houses that had it, and like I caught like the first 10 minutes of Monster Squad one time. We got to go. And then, the last, like it was on in the middle, and I caught a couple more scenes. Got to go turn that off. And I had like 4 or 5 different houses. It was like years later that I actually finally got to watch that thing start to finish. But it was like, all of the monsters are in this one, and kids are fighting them, like, amazing. But that's something that just like kids nowadays, like, no. You want it, you can get it, but I guess one of the questions and challenges is like, and I think Paper Girls is doing interesting things with that, is when you do set things in the past, it taps into that nostalgia vein for people like us, but like, how do you make it relevant to an audience today?
Yeah, well, I found, I'm always surprised at the amount of kids that are interested. Like if I'm at a convention or something and picking it up, and the age group, it's I guess you would call it young adult. I always say it's PG, 80s PG, which now would kind of be PG-13. So I just, I don't think there's anything really bad in it, but I always tell the parents, if you're okay letting your kids watch Goonies or something like that, then they're okay with this. There's maybe some minor cursing and stuff like that in it, but it really is sort of in the spirit of those movies. So, and I'm always surprised that how some of these kids really do enjoy that. And I guess the easiest way to do that now is just Stranger Things. I mean, you can't tell me kids today aren't into Stranger Things, and that all takes place in the 80s and everything. So, before Stranger Things came out, I guess, the funny thing is, even though I only have 5 issues, this is sort of it's a passion project, but it's also a back burner project. So it's kind of like I might work on it an hour a day until it gets done. And with the goal being that I finally, when I finish the whole series, I can collect it in a trade. And then that's when I'm really going to go out and push this thing. But for now, these individual issues are kind of like benchmarks. So like I said before, if I set out to do a trade or a graphic novel, it would be like, oh, this is too big, I'm never going to finish. But if I break it down into issues, then it's a little more manageable. So I've been doing this for a while, even back when Super 8 came out. I don't know if you remember Super 8, the J.J. Abrams movie. So I would, back then I would kind of compare it to that. Oh, kids, if you like Super 8, then you'll like this. And so now it's like, I could just point people to Stranger Things, and that's usually it's so popular right now. It's usually a pretty good selling point for anyone that may not have grown up in the 80s, but and I think everyone kind of has that, because you and I both grew up in the 80s, Tyler, and what were we watching? We were watching stuff about the 50s, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff, it doesn't, I think kids there's something that's interesting to kids about it. So it was never like a turnoff to me to watch something that happened in the 50s when I was growing up in the 80s. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. So your background is in graphic design. The Serkworks, your Serkwork Art Labs website is just, it's great, it's brilliant, and I think the brand is really strong there and a lot of fun. Sort of, how did you sort of come to develop this sort of approach as your brand?
Yeah, so a little bit of background for anyone that's not familiar. On my YouTube channel, I wear this green lab coat, and I've got this set that kind of looks like this underground layer. I'm really big in branding. But what it all started off with was, as you mentioned, kind of my tagline, I do robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. So basically it was me saying to myself, what are the things that I like to draw? I like to draw robots. I like to draw zombies. I like to draw aliens. How do all those things connect? And I'm thinking, well, what if there was this clandestine top secret lab where they're experimenting with alien technology, like reverse engineering alien technology. Simultaneously in another department, maybe they're developing biological weapons that could, or something that could break out and become a zombie outbreak. And they're, building, their technology, building robots and stuff. So I thought, okay, that's how all these things that I love to do kind of fit together. And that was sort of the impetus of the idea of doing the whole underground layer, mad science type theme, and kind of wrap it around everything. So, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. I mean, I love just some of the stuff that you have up here, some of your art prints and the How to Kill Monsters art print, like just some brilliant stuff there. And you can see how a lot of people would put this up in their offices, in the rooms for inspiration,
or if you ever get in the situation where you need to know how to kill Godzilla or Frankenstein or Dracula, it's kind of a cheat sheet for how to defeat every monster.
Exactly. So talk to me a little bit more about the tutorials you do on YouTube. You've been doing a weekly video. What made you start doing them?
Again, this all goes to art and story. I was watching those guys, and I learned so much from that podcast, and it's unfortunate. I wish they had an archive somewhere where I can go back, because it's still all so much good stuff. But from that kind of community, there was something else that jumped out. One of the hosts who joined kind of later in that podcast was a guy named Kevin Cross, and he started something called the 100 Days of Making Comics Challenge. And basically, it's real simple. You just spend at least an hour, or no, at least 30 minutes a day, every day for 100 days straight working on your comic. And then the idea is that if you do that, you build a habit, and then you'll at least have, if not a full comic done by the end of that time, you will have made a lot of progress and you have built that habit. So he was doing that. Just he kind of adapted that from some kind of workout regimen. He says, I could do this with comics. So he started doing himself. And then people like myself kind of saw what he's doing, and I reached out to him and said, hey, do you mind if I do this too? And then it became a big community, and everyone started. And part of that process is also that you either vlog about it or you just talk about it on a daily basis to let people, to kind of hold yourself accountable. Yeah. So I started doing these videos every single day. And, of course that I can't do anything simple. That's when I started coming up with the whole idea of the underground layer and all that kind of stuff. But, so I started doing these every day. And then once I completed that challenge, I'm like, well, if I can do a video every day, I can certainly do one every week. So up until I don't know what it is, 7-8 years now, I've been doing these videos at least every day. And, just kind of sharing what I know about comics. And then, I think it was it a couple of years ago, I did a series called Making Comics 101. It's still available on my YouTube channel. It's Serkworks. Just search Serkworks on YouTube. And it's basically, soup to nuts, everything you want to know about making comics. Because there's a lot of content out on YouTube about making comics, but you kind of had to search it out. It wasn't any kind of order,
Yeah. Right.
So I wanted, start with coming up with your ideas all the way to printing, publishing, and every step in between. So it's like, and then there's bonus episodes and everything. The whole thing is like 72 episodes long, or you can just watch the core videos, which I think is maybe 23 videos, but it will basically take you every step of the process on how to make a comic real easy. And so I always say it's the most comprehensive course on how to make comics for free that you're going to find anywhere. Yeah. So I created that, and I just the more you put out there, this, Tyler, the more you put out there, the more you build an audience, and people start to follow you and learn from you and everything. So, and it's enjoyable for me to give back, because I remember coming up, creating comics before the internet. It seemed like a lot of people held every artist, they would hold things as this carefully guarded trade secret, and they didn't want to put that information out there. And because of that, it was difficult to learn, like, what kind of pens to use, all this different stuff. And it's just, the age we live in now is just incredible, because so many artists are willing to share all that knowledge. So, yeah. I mean, younger artists today just have such an upper hand. I mean, I see these amazing young artists that are just light years ahead of where I was, because they have all this stuff at their fingertips. So if they want to, they can. The stuff's out there. You just have to put out the effort, and like anything you want to learn is out there. You just got to seek it out. So yeah.
I mean, I remember, there's probably 5 to 10 years where if it wasn't in How to Make Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee, that wasn't knowledge that I had. It is like I think artists now have the challenge of, there's actually so much information out there that sorting through it is the real challenge. So it's awesome that you've put together a sequential series that they can get a lot of value from over on YouTube. So we're going to make sure that we link up to that. Any tips on sort of how to stay consistent, whether it be with your promotion or comics or both, as you've been able to do?
Well, yeah, like I said, it is really building that habit. I would suggest, like, that particular challenge that I talked about, the Making Comics 101 challenge. I mean, sorry, I get these confused, because it's Making Comics 101 and it's 100 Days of Making Comics. So it's similar, but the 100 Days of Making Comics, I think there's still people that kind of do it, but it doesn't have to. You can come up with your own challenge, or kind of do what Kevin did and sort of adapt in a challenge or something that was built for workout or whatever, and make it work for comics or whatever. But it really is just building habits, because if you can do something, and again, start small. 30. Everyone has, no matter how busy you are, you have 30 minutes in your day every day to find time. And it usually makes sense to find, if you can carve out that time, the same time every day, like when you first wake up. Maybe you wake up early before you go to work, before the kids wake up or whatever. Put in that 30 minutes. Do that for 100 days, and then you will have built up that. You'll have built up that habit. It's really just about building habits and not getting frustrated, knowing that, like, for instance, if you wanted to start a YouTube channel, usually when you start a YouTube channel, you're trying to figure this stuff out. But the great thing is, chances are when you're first starting, you don't have a huge audience. So your audience will sort of grow with you. So So you don't have to worry so much if you're making mistakes because not too many people are seeing it. But the better you get, the more your audience builds, and then you get more comfortable. I mean, when I first started, if you go back and watch like my first video, oh, they were so boring and they just droned on and on. And then, you know, gradually I started making it more concise, and I got better at speaking to the camera and everything. But you just, you know, and I'm an introvert, so it wasn't always, you know, it wasn't easy for me. But you know, I knew that end goal, that's something that I wanted to do. And I always used to make, you know, videos and stuff. Like I used to do SNL type parodies with my camcorder when I was a kid. So I always kind of had a passion for that. I'm like, well, let's combine some of the stuff that I love. I like doing like video content and everything. So, and I, you know, I definitely like, you know, sharing stuff about comics that I've learned and everything along the way. So it was just kind of a natural fit. But it's just something you start off, and I watch people that follow me who started off really rough, and now they're, you know, they've got their own podcasts and their own, you know, everything. And it's cool to kind of see, because it just reminds me of the way I started. But it just really is just start small, and then and build those habits, and before you know it, you'll look back and like, oh man, look at all this cool stuff I created little by little.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I've always kind of been the kind of person that, like, as soon as I learn something, I want to go tell somebody about it. You know, to the point where, like, in high school, I created my first like how to make comics video as a project for like one of my classes in high school. So like, you know, on VHS tape. So you know, it's part of ingrained in me. But I guess there are some creators out there that, like, I think would love to blog about or podcast about or do YouTube videos or make TikToks about making comics, and the thing that stops them is saying, you know, well, you know, who am I? Like, there's always there are more people, more accomplished people out there, better artists, better writers, etc. Like, what do you have to say for people that would love to get it, would love to put themselves out there like that, but that's the thing that's holding them back?
Yeah, well, here's what I would say. As much as there are always going to be people that are way better, more accomplished, there are also way more people that just don't know. It doesn't matter where you're starting. There's people that don't know anything about comics, and if you know a little bit or anything, you have knowledge to share. And what I found out when I was first starting off is that sometimes those people that are so good and know so much, it's a little intimidating for people that are just starting off. So sometimes they'll gravitate to somebody who's just maybe a step ahead of where they're at. And then it's a little more achievable. So you get, no matter where you are, you're gonna find there are people that can learn from what you learn, and you'll grow, and your audience will grow. It's really interesting. But don't compare yourself, you know, to these people that are just, I mean, everyone started where you're starting now. So it's just really about starting. You know, something that other people don't know, no matter where you are, and it's just starting. It's that simple. And don't concern yourself too much with these super accomplished people, because everyone started at the same place, really.
Yeah, and there's this crazy thing where, like, the more you know, the more you become aware of what you still have to learn.
Yeah.
and so actually, it's actually people like, and you tend to sort of discount, oh, well, you know, because I'm not a master or I'm not like super famous, well, everybody must know what I know. When in reality, like, if you've made comics, if you've figured some things out, there are so many people that are so much farther behind than you are, and the things that you can share, you know, would be revolutionary. And so yeah, so like the ability to just say, hey, you know, can I help one person, right? Can I, if by sharing something that I learned, if that was going to help one person, that's worth doing it. And what you'll end up finding out is there's actually a whole lot more people than one that it's going to help.
Yeah. One other thing I would say, Tyler, real quick, is that the other thing is, if you've been doing it for as long as me, sometimes these things become old hat, and it's hard for me to communicate to somebody just starting off, because it's just like, it was so long ago. So that's another reason why, if you're just a little bit ahead of where they're at. You're closer to having just learned that and being able to, communicate how to do that. Whereas somebody who may be doing it a little bit longer is just like, oh, that's real easy. You just do this, and it's not as helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to play the comics launch speed round? It's been a while since I've whipped this one out, but
oh boy, I should have done my homework.
Yeah, no,
I forgot about this.
Right. As an old pro, let's see if that weekly videos have paid off. No. All right, here we go. Finish the sentence. Kickstarter is blank.
Kickstarter is opportunity. It's a way to open a door to something. I mean, you can. Is this supposed to be one word answers? I don't know how much I'm supposed to go.
I'll cut you off if I need to.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't have to seek out a Marvel or DC anymore to publish a comic. It really is. It's just like a lifeboat for independent artists, and you can do things your way. And it really is. If there was one word to describe it, it's just opportunity.
Great. If you could change anything about the Kickstarter platform, what would that be?
Let's see. Oh man, if I could change anything, I think sometimes it would be helpful if there was maybe some when you on the backer levels, if there was some image of what you're getting rather than stuff you put in the story, just so it's right there, because having to go back and forth. Although Kickstarter's been doing, they had the opportunity to change that for a while. They haven't, so they probably have a good reason for it.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things that like all of the newer platforms, they just have that, and there's no question about it. But year in, year out, launch in, launch out, it's still working. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever do change on that. What would you say, Scott, your secret weapon is? A tool, a resource, an app, a book, etc., that you just couldn't do what you do without? And I will link up to, you have an awesome resource section on your website. So this is tough because I'm asking you for just one secret weapon.
Oh man. Oh, this is difficult. Secret. I don't know if this is a cop out, but I would just say community. Is that too broad? Because really, if you can build a community, and everyone can do it online. I mean, I just have the most amazing friends and colleagues and fellow creators that I can communicate with online, and it really is. That's another thing that keeps me going. I do weekly live streams. We have on guests, and it just continues to grow, and it's the biggest resource that I would say I have, the best resource. If I didn't have that community, I would probably be lost.
Oh yeah, no, I totally understand and see that. And the Comics Launch Pro community that I've been able to build, and I've got a launch going on right now, and so I'm like right in the middle of it. But just having like a built-in group of, these are comic creator crowdfunders that are all launching this month, that are all looking to cross promote, that are all excited to pull people on each other's live streams, as you said, like cross promote, come up with like cool incentives for each other's backers, like that stuff really, really does make an impact. And there's so much that goes into these launches and making these books, and from, the very start to getting them printed and out to people. And, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know, but getting around a community is a great way to make sure that you know more than you did when you came in.
Absolutely.
Great answer. Fulfillment is an area that often trips up Kickstarter creators. Do you have any fulfillment tip for our listeners?
I'm probably, I've fulfilled all my campaigns myself, and I get help, I guess. And whether that's if you want to go with like a fulfillment center or whatever. But my last Kickstarter I I always worry about saying this, a fan, but now I'm trying to adopt the fact that yes, I do have fans, and there's nothing wrong with that, because I'm a fan of things too. So whereas before I didn't really like that word, I'm warming up to it. But anyway, so I had a fan that reached out who was local and was like, hey, can can I help you? Can I help you? I'd be willing to help you fulfill this and everything. And so I gave him a bunch of cool swag and everything, and he was more than happy to help me fulfill it and everything. So if you can pull in some extra help with that, definitely take people up on that. So that's something that happened before that I'm gonna have to find somebody to help me out when I'm ready to fulfill this too, because it really does. It takes some time, but if you get a little help and people that are willing to help you out with that, that's great.
Yeah, it surprised me in the past too, but I have had people saying, "Hey, I love bagging and boarding comics, and wouldn't mind hanging out and helping with a Kickstarter." And it's like, oh, that's amazing. But yeah, and it also is amazing how, like, even adding just one person that's taking one thing or doing something alongside of you during the fulfillment can just make it so much easier and go by so much faster. All right, last speed round question. Can you recommend one comic book or book not done by you that more people need to check out?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Okay. I'm kind of hesitating to mention this. I mean, this is a great book. It's my friend Gary Hodges has a book called Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. He's got two. He's working on another one. And I'm trying. It's not. He doesn't distribute as well as I think he should. So he'll like print up a handful at a time. And I guess you would just have to Google Gary Hodges Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. Hopefully he has copies available. But it is this ridiculous concept of this this government agency that is building these dinosaurs to fight this alien invasion. But that's not what it is. I mean, it sounds so ridiculous, but it's really done in earnest. And it really is, these are character studies. I mean, he's got two books out. The first one is about these men in black. And it basically, I always tell people, it's like X-Files meets Pulp Fiction. It's a little more on the violent side, but the character development in the story. The second one is about somebody who's an eyewitness to one of these and kind of what she goes through afterwards so they can kind of silence her and stuff. And I mean, they're just great stories. So it is one of the best comic you've probably never heard about. So just like I said, search Dinosaurs. It's also the abbreviation for that. So it's DVSM, Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots. And then there's a date. There's a couple, like one's 1979, I think, and one's they're 90 something. I don't know. There's two different dates because they take place, and he's working on the third one now, and it's just a brilliant comic. Hopefully he's got some available because he needs to print more of them and get the word out.
Has he taken it to Kickstarter?
No, and I'm trying to get him to do that as well. But he did mention that that he's maybe thinking about it to collect once he gets this third one done, collecting the first three. And so I hope he does, because it's just more people need to see that book.
Great. Well, this is awesome, Scott. We could talk, I'm sure, all day, but you've got comics to make and comics to sell on Kickstarter. Let me give you a chance to share a little bit about the stream that you do. I know you get together and you have a sort of podcast that you do as well. So what's that about, and who's it for?
Yeah, so it's called the Artcasters, and a lot of it does center around comics, or just kind of how to make a career out of art. And it's kind of I have two co-hosts, and it's kind of like, if you go to my YouTube channel, serkworks.com, you may notice that there's like really odd numbers of like you may see, episode 222, and then the next one will be episode 226, and there's like missing episodes, but there is a playlist. The way we do it is it kind of rotates between my channel and my co-host channel. So just to straighten out any kind of confusion there, but it basically is just a weekly live stream. We do it. I'm trying to get Tyler on the show, but it's like we record Pacific time, like 9 o'clock at night, because my co-host is an art director who's in LA, and he's got like an hour commute. So by the time he gets home, that's really the only time we can record. So it's really hard to get East Coast people on the show, but it's a live stream. We do it usually every Thursday night. And we just talk. We have a one topic. We usually have a guest. We pick a topic, and we just kind of work our way around that particular topic. And it's just giving advice. The thing that I really try to do, whether it's whether it's the YouTube channel content, whether it's the live stream, or like I create digital products for comic creators. And actually there's a free one. If you go to my website at serkworks.com, you can download the Comic Maker Starter Kit, and it's got templates and it's got brushes and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I have some other ones that are even more robust that you can pay for or whatever. But yeah, I just like building things that'll help comic creators be better comic creators and help them save time and everything like that. So there's a lot of research. We try to put out a lot of resources, whether it's through the website or the YouTube channel or whatever, but it's really a lot of it is geared towards comic book creators.
Yeah, that's awesome, and we will definitely link up to that that starter kit as well. That's a great thing to offer, and it looks super valuable for somebody getting started in this world. That's awesome. What besides this project? Obviously, we'll get this latest issue of Young and the Dead wrapped up. Anything else you want to make sure that listeners know about that's coming up for you, or anything else that you're excited about for what's left of 2022?
Let's see. As far as the YouTube channel goes, I'm redesigning my studio, so it may be I may kind of premiere that like first of next year. But there's going to be the content and everything. I really want to up the content, the quality and everything of what I'm doing, get tighter edits and things like that, and just really take my YouTube channel to the next level. So I'm working on that. And behind the scenes, I'm creating a bunch of comics. Like I kind of found this niche as far as making comics. It's not as glamorous as working for Marvel or DC, but I do a lot of like public service comics or comics for nonprofits and companies and things like that. And again, not as glamorous as a Marvel or DC, but it pays a lot better, and it helps me. It affords me time to do all this other stuff, whether it's YouTube, because I'm not making any money off of YouTube. So that's where most of my time is spent. But you know, every once, like I said, I've got my Young and the Dead that I put a little bit of time in every single day, and then eventually, every so often, I'll get an issue done and I can launch it on Kickstarter. But besides that, and the YouTube channel, that's pretty much what I've got going on.
Well, awesome. Yeah. And I have heard from a couple other creators that, have gotten government contracts or other, grant funded work to work in this space, that's actually a really great way to make comics for a living.
Yeah.
So awesome that you've had some success with that. All right. Well, we're going to link up to everything, the website, the YouTube, you do that great branding thing where your Cirque works at everything. So
pick a name that no one else would even attempt to have, and then you can get everything, because that's really important, because it's so hard when everyone's social media handle is different on every platform.
Absolutely. But you made it easier for your audience to find you, Scott. So I'm excited about that. The book is Young and the Dead, No Zombies Allowed, 1 through 5 on Kickstarter now. I hope you'll check it out. And thank you so much, Scott, for being here with us on Comics Launch.
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it.
All right. And everyone else watching at home, thank you so much for watching. And we can't wait to see what you launch next.